spirit within you is
Hey, good morning, everybody, or afternoon or evening, because I don't know where you are in the world. But right now it's 9 a.m. Mountain Time in the United States and Canada. And my name is Tracy Brown. I am so happy to be with you today on the Saturday morning Science of Mind and Spirit Conversations. And just by chance, if this is your first time with us on Saturday morning, there is a team. There is a team of us, and one of us is here every Saturday at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. And from January through mid-August, we actually go chapter by chapter through the Science of Mind textbook written by Ernest Holmes. And then from the mid-August through the end of the year, every week, we pull something juicy, delicious out of the Science of Mind Library and Archives reservoir, and we share it with you. Sometimes that's an article written by Ernest Holmes himself, or it's an article featured in the Science of Mind magazine in the past, or just some foundational information about the philosophy, the faith, and the way of life that we refer to as Science of Mind, that you can then find in the archives if you want to dig a little deeper. But today we are in chapter 23 of the Science of Mind textbook, and that chapter is titled Immortality. It is actually one of the longer chapters. We probably next year should consider dividing this into 2 weeks because there is a lot to cover in 50-ish minutes today. And we always love to remind you that it can be a conversation. We didn't call it, I think the first year we called it the lecture series. But most of us wanted to have a little bit more engagement with the people who were watching, especially watching live. And so we are so happy to say good morning to Shay. And it's a little interesting when it says the New Thought Media Network is saying good morning to me, because there are about a half dozen people that could be. So I'm just going to say good morning back to Shay, and good morning to whichever one of my colleagues from the New Thought Media Network is watching today. And hey, Anita, thanks for dialing in. And you too, I can see that there are some of you on LinkedIn, and some of you on YouTube, and some of you on Facebook. You're not required to check in, but please feel free to. And throughout our time together today, I do want to encourage you, if you have examples or if you have questions that come up from the quotes that I share, then please put them in the chat, because I can see them and I will do my best to respond to them as possible. So, what are we talking about today? We are talking about immortality. Now, in the textbook, this is pages 371 to 389. So not quite 20 pages, but Ernest Holmes jam packs a lot into this chapter. So when we dive in, it's really important for me to give you a kind of an overview of everything that he covers in this chapter. So in chapter 23, he goes through, this is kind of, he does the subtitles and he puts them at the beginning, which I often find really helpful, because then I can get an overall feel for what's going to be covered. And so I'm sharing that with you. These are just all the subtitles. The meaning of immortality of mind and spirit. We could probably spend the whole time just on that. Where did man come from and why? What is the body? Shall we have a body hereafter? The ether of science. Is there spirit communication as part of immortality? What of reward and punishment? Shall we rest in the hereafter? And personal convictions of life eternal. So in order to make sure that we could actually get through a lot of this, what I did was I went through and I pulled out some of my favorite quotes, and to give us a place to begin. So this was the first quote I pulled about the meaning of immortality. To most of us, immortality means we shall persist after the experience of physical death, but retain a full recognition of ourselves and have the ability to recognize others. We shall persist after the experience of physical death, and we should still have the ability to recognize ourselves and recognize others. And Ernest Holmes doesn't really dive more deeply into that, except that he does talk about the continuous stream of the same consciousness and self-knowingness that we might now possess in the form that we are most familiar to. He says if one is really to continue as a self-conscious personality beyond this life, one can do so only if they maintain a continuous stream of the same consciousness and self-knowingness that is now possessed. And he doesn't shy away from this idea of personal identity and memory. But what he says about it is that personal identity, like I am Tracy Brown, I am Dr. Tracy Brown, RScP, I am the business owner of intentional inclusion, right? That kind of personal identification and memory binds into one sequence the old life and the new. So we must carry with us, after the experience of physical death, a complete remembrance. For it is to this alone that we must look for the link which binds one event to another, making life a continuous stream of self conscious expression. To suppose that man can forget and still maintain a self conscious identity is to suppose that you could cut off your entire past without destroying the logical sequence of personality. And then there's a piece that reads it like this that I find a little interesting. Individuality might remain without remembrance, but not so with personality. For what we are is the result of what we have been, the result of what has gone before. And I remember the very first time I read that, and I was like, wait, I'm confused, because the whole idea of individuality and personality to me were kind of the same thing. Now I understand more. It's like, oh, every time I would, in whatever way be expressing, I would always be a unique emanation, a unique individual expression. But and that's individuality, but my personality is not, whether I'm an introvert or extrovert, but the memories of all that I have been and all that I am being, because that then is my soul expressing at different times in different ways, but my soul doesn't change. So the personality continues. Now, don't get too hung up in the details. I'm probably sharing a little bit more than I need to, but I'm just trying to lay the foundation for the, 20 things, other quotations that I'm going to share with you. And at the end of the first section, the meaning of immortality, Ernest Holmes ends that section with this in all caps. Death cannot rob you of anything if you are immortal. Death cannot rob you of anything if you are immortal. And so that really begins that process of us remembering that this physical body is not who we are, right? It is the container that we are currently using to express in this lifetime, in this experience of humanity, of being human that we are in right now. But the essence of who we are, the essence of who I am, does not die with this physical body. The essence of who I am is going to find a way. Actually, it doesn't have to look or find a way. It is going to emerge into a different expression. And the essence is always expressing, expanding, evolving. Some of you have heard me do treatments, and over the years, I have just really grabbed onto that, right? Life is expressing, expanding, and evolving. And so once my soul, or the essence of me, leaves this physical body, it will still be expressing in some other form. And that is why we talk about immortality. Okay, so now if you absolutely have to leave before all of our time is done, you got like the essence of what we teach, a big part of what we teach about immortality. Let's go on and see what Ernest Holmes has to say. So, in the next section, where did man come from and why? Where did the human experience come from or why? And Ernest Holmes says, we have evolved from, or we have become manifested in that which is. And I'm not sure that I am, I'm not sure that I actually can talk about this with confidence. It's a very short subsection, and it starts off with to inquire why life itself is useless. And I agree 100% with that. Like, don't get caught up in the, well, why is life existing? I mean, life is life, and life creates more life. And it's like, okay, why is not the question. So why life is self-existent, and all of the science, wit, and art of humanity can never fathom that which is self-existent. I am that I am. But then he goes on to say the invisible life principle incarnated in us cannot be analyzed. Any attempt to do so is futile. And so we have evolved from, or we have become manifested in that which is life now, that which life is being. And so it's, where do we come from? We came from whatever was existing before into what is existing now. And the last paragraph in this section is, we are not so much interested, however, in why we are as in what we are. That we are some part of capital L life. No one can deny and keep faith with reason. So we are a part of life, and life is always changing or evolving, like the quote that I'm sharing. We have evolved from, and we are manifested in that which is life. And life now doesn't look the exact same way as life did 2,000 years ago, or 5,000 years ago, or how it will look 1,000 years from now. But we are evolved from that which has already happened, and we become manifested in that form of life which is now. And so he, as I said, this is like 1, 2, 3 paragraphs, and they're not even typical Ernest Holmes paragraphs. 2 of the 3 are really short paragraphs. And if you happen to be following along in your copy of the Science of Mind textbook, we're going to move on page 373 to the next subsection in this chapter on immortality. Because he's just said, like, don't try to figure out the why, but recognize the what. And for us as being human, when we think about the what, we most often think about our physical body. And when we talk about immortality, part of the reason many of us get nervous or uncomfortable is because we think we are this body, this physical form, and when it dies, and if the body is buried in the earth, or if the body is cremated, or when I go to Egypt, I think about, and what would it be like if my body was mummified? Like, but anyway, whatever happens to this body, this physical form, is a big part of our consideration around how we see death, and how we entertain the idea of immortality. So Ernest Holmes um, starts this subsection with this. When man first awakened to self-consciousness, there he had a body with a definite form, showing that instinctive life, God, had already clothed itself with the form of flesh. body or form is the necessary outcome of self-knowingness. In order to know, there must be something to be known. And so this leads us into this section with the idea that, yes, there is a physical body. Yes. Otherwise, we couldn't know ourselves if it was just an invisible idea, right? The concept of life, the principle of life is actually invisible, but the concreteness of our bodies and of course our brains give us the ability to be self-aware. And he writes, body is a concrete manifestation, right? It's concrete. It's a manifestation. It's something that's physical, existing in time and space. But its purpose is to furnish a vehicle, a container through which life may express itself. Yes, yes, making sense. I hope it's making sense. Rafe, I love your comment that that which is that self-existent substance. It can't be defined by form, but rather it defines what form ultimately is. And that then gives us the body that we think of as the physical body. And we benefit by being able to separate the idea or the concept of life from and the invisibleness of capital L life with the concrete physical expression of our human experience, lowercase l, life. And so in this section on page 373 and 374, that's what he's talking about. But he only does that. He only does that so that he can then ask the next question. So, okay, here I am, Dr. Tracy Brown. I'm in this physical body. I got it. And it's existing as a vehicle for me to experience life. So what happens when the physical body dies? Shall we have a body hereafter? The soul needs a physical body here, or else it would not have created one, evolved one. But when by reason of disease, decay, or accident, the physical body is no longer an adequate instrument through which the soul may function, it lays the present body aside. But it continues to function through a more subtle way of expressing. We believe in this because if the soul is eternal, right? We believe in the eternality, continuity, and immortality of the human soul, ever expanding, expressing. I know I did modify that declaration of principle just a tiny bit, but you know what I'm talking about. And so it's like, oh, the soul is going to continue to express. Shall we have a body hereafter, after the physical, after the disease, the decay, or the accident? The physical body is no longer able to no longer able to actually contain the soul or to be used by the soul, then that is the time for the soul or the essence of who we are to let the body go, but the soul does not die. The soul does not die. So this shall we have a body hereafter, at the bottom of page 374, second to the last paragraph, it lays the present body aside and continues to function through a more subtle one. Now, a more subtle body could be an invisible form because it is operating as energy. A more subtle body could be something that is in something other than human form, and we don't know what that is. So, saying that our soul, or the essence of who we are, is immortal is not the same as saying you will reincarnate as another human being, because we don't know that. Ernest Holmes talks about that. How could we be so arrogant to think that the only worthy form for our soul is another human body, or something that we know? Like, I've heard people joke about, ooh, the way my neighbor um, treats their dog, their pets. I'm going to come back as their dog, or a dog with, pet owners like my neighbors, because they have it all luxury, everything's done for them, and they are loved every day. But what if there's something that gives you that same feeling or experience, but it's a form that we don't even know about, right? So when Ernest Holmes says that our soul, our essence, continues to function just through a more subtle, quote unquote, body. So the question, Kiki, thank you, about capital L life. So I will say that a lot of times especially like if we're reading something and maybe Ernest Holmes has capitalized life or love, or usually when we do that, even if he hasn't said that, we may say capital L whatever it is, in this case, life, to remind ourselves that we are talking about the absolute principle, the capital T truth, right? The absolute, the principle, that which never changes. And lowercase l would be the human experience, which is conditional. And in this case, so the life that I experience here on earth as Tracy Brown, it might be guided by, and hopefully it is grounded in, capital L life, the principle of life, the spiritual principle of life. And when someone cuts me off in traffic in the course of my everyday and I'm irritated, right, that's lowercase l. That's okay. It's the human experience I'm having right now, but it is not the absolute truth or the expression of the larger principle of life itself. Roy, great question. Why do we have to go through so much pain when we transition over to the next life? Now, I have an opinion. Okay, so this is not science of mind law. This is Tracy's opinion based on observation. In our world, in the modern world, Western world, we have removed the idea of death as being just natural and the process of the human life experience. You're born, you go through experience, and you die. We have medicalized it, right? So you can't just die. There's a human consciousness belief, at least in the Western world, that you have to have some illness, right? You have to have gone through something. You have to have, uh, you know, have to have had all this pain in order to die. And while many of us don't personally or individually believe that, society wide, that's pretty common. There has to be a medical reason. And usually that means you had to suffer or go through some kind of pain. It could be an accident, and you could, also have some result or injury from that and go through pain. But in reality, in the reality of spiritual truth, death is normal, death is natural, and many of us know about stories where, especially in indigenous cultures, where, in some Native American and First Nation tribes, part of that is someone will just go into the woods and not return because they know it's their time. Or many of us know examples of people in in busy urban areas or not, who have just said, I know it's my time, and then they will lay down and go to sleep, and they their body dies but their soul doesn't. And so I think a lot of that pain that we go through is that we believe that in order to transition, like we're clinging, and that is the other another thing, right? We're clinging to our human experience. I think often every couple of years I review, am I okay with a DNR, a do not resuscitate? Like if this is my time, and and something happens to me and I'm not breathing, can I accept that this is my time, or no? I want the doctors to do anything that technology allows them to do to extend my life, no matter what the quality of that life will be, which cannot be predicted, because I'm clinging to the human experience, because that's what I know. And that's all I know. And surely death would not be something better. Or if it is, it's unknown. So I'm afraid to go into the unknown. So I don't think we actually have to go through so much pain when in the process of transitioning, but we cling to the human life, or we are affected by the general consciousness that it is required. Yes, Rafe. Socially, we've established pain, emotional and physical pain, as a necessary rite of passage to the afterlife life. And I'm doing everything I can in my life to disconnect from that as much as possible, so that I will not be one of those who is required to, even if it's a requirement in my own emotional subconscious, I will not have to go through that. So let's jump in to where Ernest Holmes goes next, because there is a lot in this almost 20-page chapter. So next he goes to the ether of science, and this and this one is one that I'm going to encourage you to actually go read for yourself if this what I say about it really interests you, because we could get bogged down here and spend the next 20 minutes in this part alone. The ether of science. Ernest Holmes starts this section on page 375 with this. Science is rapidly proving that there is much more in the universe than we can see with the naked eye. Now, keep in mind, he wrote this in the late 1920s and early to mid 1930s. And so, where science was at that time, that's what he's referring to. And everything he's saying, we know that in the next 50 years from the time he wrote this, so much was further discovered, or I like to say validating what we already knew from a spiritual perspective. Science is rapidly proving that there is much more in the universe than we can see with the naked eye. We are now being taught that ether is more solid than matter. We know that the ether penetrates everything. It is in our bodies, at the center of the earth, and throughout all space. This means that within our present bodies, there is a substance more solid than the body which we see, touch, feel. This idea is very far reaching, for it shows that we might have a body within the physical one, which could be as real as the one of which we're accustomed to think. So, um, this idea that ether is more solid than matter, and the resurrection body then will not be snatched from some cosmic shelf as the soul soars. It's already within us, and it will be a fit instrument for the future unfoldment of the soul. Now, we could talk about this for a long time, but I am going to encourage you to just think about it and then think about what you know about science and then just play with the idea that ether, which we think of on the conscious side, we think of it as invisible. But what if the true essential nature of our being is living within this body, and when this body dies, it is that ether or ethereal body that actually holds and transports the essence of our being, and it is the idea, or it is what then attaches itself or enfolds itself into the next form. Now, for some of you, that may feel a little woo woo. I don't know about that, Tracy Brown. And that's okay. I'm just inviting you to try it on and to just see how it feels, and then do what I did at one point, which was just take that one section, the Ether of Science, from page 375 through the first half of 377, and I just read it like 3 or 4 times out loud to take it in. But I love this one sentence, which is why I use the quote: the resurrection body, then, that body, that form that is still alive after the physical body I know dissolves, disappears, burns up, is gone, that body is not like my soul is floating out here in space, in the invisible, searching and going to the human expression store and deciding I want that body, right? It's like it's not the way we might think about it in our human context of going to the grocery store or going to the shopping mall to pick out something new. What if? Ernest Holmes just asks us to consider, what if we were simply already, our essence was already in this ether that transports it from place to place. So we're not going to get bogged down there. Is there spirit communication? It's the next subsection. Oh, sorry. I love this section so much. I quoted something else too. And now that I'm seeing it, it's like, oh, that's right. Well, I know, I remember when I said, oh, you can't leave this section without saying this and sharing it. To suppose the objective faculties die with the brain is to suppose it's the brain that thinks and reasons. And this has been proven to be false over and over and over and over again. Because if the brain could think on its own, it would think on and on forever. And how often have you been aware of or heard the news or talked to someone's family members, and they're trying to make a decision whether to keep the body alive because their loved one is brain dead. The brain has died, but the heart is still beating. So it's not the brain that thinks, it is the thinker that thinks through the brain, perhaps, but of itself, the physical brain, even though it is the repository of so much and we rely on it so much, it has no power to think or feel on its own. Detach the brain and it cannot formulate ideas nor work out plans. The thinker alone can think. And oh my goodness, I spent hours, literally hours, thinking about, well, who is the thinker? Well, I'm the thinker, but don't I think with my brain? but wait, what do you mean my brain can't think on its own? And then, but my heart is still beating, but I'm brain dead. So is my heart the real thinker? I mean, let's have some real fun discussions about this because it makes like your head pop off. And then the more you get into it, it just reminds you that it is more complex. Our lives are more complex than we like to admit because it's complex. That means we don't always completely understand it, but we get this little glimpse of, oh, the brain is serving the integration of all thinking and feeling, and I am using the brain the same way I use that the same way that Tracy uses her legs and feet to go roller skating, right? I know how to I have trained them and I've trained myself to work together to move in coordination to the music at the skating rink. And oh, from the moment we come into our human bodies, the majority of us, right, we are trained to utilize the brain for thinking, for remembering, for processing, for analyzing. But the brain cannot operate by itself no more than if my foot was amputated at the ankle, that you could put my foot over here or over here and it would walk on its own. So if our body deteriorates and turns to dust, does the ether body ever deteriorate or turn to dust? I'm not an expert on this, but my answer would be no, because the ether body and the spiritual body, once they are not in this physical body, they're not physical form. Physical form deteriorates. The bananas that are on my kitchen counter in physical form, if they stay on that counter for 10 days, they are going to deteriorate. Physical form deteriorates. But the spiritual soul, the soul, that which is invisible to our human experience, does not deteriorate. We just can't see it, touch it, feel it. And so, Rafe, I love you. There are absolutely no words to fully express my gratitude that my human brain is not truly in charge. Let the church say amen. Because woo, if our human brains were completely in charge, we give our brains more power and control than we probably should. But if they were truly, completely, 100% in charge, and we think we have problems now, oh my goodness, I don't want to think about how our lives would be if they were. Hi, Nancy. I recently looked at a rental property across from a cemetery. Didn't get it, but wondered if the proximity to a cemetery would disrupt my peace. Possibly. What do you think? So there is a part of me that would love to live across the street from a cemetery. Not in the cemetery, but across the street from one. But that is because I have made this peace with the invisible. And I imagine that I would be attracting and connecting with the benevolent spirits that are looking for a place to communicate or a person to communicate with. I'm aware that being open to the invisible, expressing life in a way that I may not be completely familiar with, that mean I would be open to what in our American and human mindset we might call, scary, being haunted in a negative way. And I guess that would be possible, but I think that the soul of me would be connecting with and seeking wisdom from the the lessons learned and the love that still is available to be given from the spirit, because in reality, even if there are bodies underground, right, the souls are not there. But if the soul is staying connected to all the forms it has been, there is, in my mind, some possibility. So I don't think it could disrupt your peace unless you or someone had a belief that this will be scary and I will be haunted and all of those things. And then because I'm believing that and because I'm thinking that, then I would likely be attracting that. Can spirit experience itself without doing so in, as, and through us as its creation? And do we continue to manifest our desires once we have released the body or in the invisible realm? So, spirit is experiencing itself in, as, and through us. And so, in, as, and through everything it creates, not just the human experience. And so, that is the purpose of it experiencing life, right? Creating life and more life. So it is not experiencing us or itself as the human Tracy Brown if the human Tracy Brown's body goes away. However, don't forget that the essential Tracy Brown is always being experienced or having an experience. And it is spirit as Tracy's true essential nature that will experience whatever it is in whatever form Tracy takes in the ethereal, in the invisible. So spirit can only experience the Tracy's human experience as Tracy Brown right now. And when this body goes away, my true essential nature, whether it is traveling in an ethereal pod or not, however it is, once I'm not in this physical body, that is still God expressing. That is still spirit experiencing life. Um, and so in the invisible realm, God is still God. God is still expressing in the unique essential nature that I am. Rafe adds to this, my understanding is that what we once understood as the ether, science now understands as the quantum field. Yes, 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 yes. Um, And so that's why I emphasize when Ernest Holmes is talking about the ether in the 20s and the 30s, you know, in the last 30 years, we've gotten more common knowledge about what we refer to as the quantum field and all of that goes with that. Uh-oh. Okay, Roy, let me look at the clock. You all are going to make us have to go into this chapter again. Um, Wait a minute. It doesn't mean that the ether body lives at or near the graveyard, does it? I mean, I would think the ether would be free to reside wherever and wherever it wants, correct? Correct. So, yes, the example about the graveyard is that, the bodies, because we have created this idea or this ritual of burying bodies. And once that body is no longer alive, when the body dies, that true essence of me, I'm in the ether wherever I am. The only way I think that's the connection is, but I always will be connected in some way to every experience that I have had. So I imagine, remember I said, like, this isn't what science of mind teaches, but I imagine, because we don't teach one thing or another about this. So I imagine that it could be possible in response to the comment about, oh, if I live across the street from a graveyard, right? Am I going to be like absorbed by or consumed by or engaged with? Are they going to disturb my peace? I think it's possible to connect if I'm connecting. In fact, I may, next time I'm on, if I can remember, I may have a personal experience reported this. I don't live across the street from a graveyard, but let's see, one, two, three, four, five, about 5 or 6 blocks away, there's a cemetery that was created in this area that I live in, um, and there are many people who are buried there, most all who are African American, because the place where I live now was one of the original freedmen settlements, and from the mid 1800s, from 1863 or 5 until 1969, it was a free black town, and it was and so this cemetery has a lot of people, and I have thought many times about just going and walking through the cemetery and paying homage to those who came before me, especially during the Civil War and during all the troubles that Black people have been through in this country and in this part of Texas. And so I thought many times I want to just go over there a few times and just, now I know that they're not there. Like the actual people are not there. And I know that when their body died, their soul, their essential nature left that body. Yet I still have this sense that I might be able to connect with them, or that with the lessons they learned that can still be communicated. I don't think they live in that body that has now disintegrated into the earth, but I think there's some connection. But I expect that to be a beneficial and loving and educational connection. And so the comment I made earlier was, if I expected that to be scary or harmful or something that some people would call evil, then I might draw an evil experience. And it may or may not, positive or negative, it may or may not have anything to do with the actual people who were buried there. I don't know. But by looking for spiritual guidance or connection, and I think I can get it there, that's all possible. It's all conjecture. But next time I'm on, if I have done that, if I have gone to that cemetery 2 or 3 times, I will report back to what happened. And Roy, I love the way that you framed that. Like, wait, what? If the ether body lives at or near the graveyard, that's crazy. It is crazy talk. So thanks for your comment. All right, so our time is really winding down. We have about 2 minutes, and we are about halfway through the chapter. So here's what I am going to do. I am going to encourage you to read the chapter on your own. And I am going to, let me look really quickly if there is any one quote that I really want to highlight in the next 2 minutes. Oh, ooh, what is that? That's not what we're looking for. We are looking for this. Reward and punishment, that death is neither a reward nor a punishment. Shall we rest in the hereafter? Our place hereafter will be what we have made it. If we have lived in accordance with the law of harmony in this life, we shall continue to live in the law of harmony uh, after this life. That is what divine law is. If we have lived any other way, we shall continue to live that way until we wake up to the facts of being. I love this, and it is a really important reminder for us that we heal what we heal in this lifetime. But when our body dies, we proceed exactly as or with the foundation that we have now. And Ernest Holmes believes in the content, in the continuation of the personal life beyond the grave, with a full recollection of itself and the ability to know itself and to make itself known. But he did not believe in the return of the soul to another life on this plane as the only possible option, because the spiral of life is upward. Evolution carries us forward. Eternal expansion is the law. And so that means it might not necessarily look like the human life or anything that we know in our human life. And he does a really generous piece in this last section, because all of us have had someone die who we really cared about. And sometimes people have asked me, well, if I believe in immortality, I shouldn't be sad. Or telling other people, if you really believe in immortality, why are you sad? And I love that Ernest Holmes does a piece in this last section that is, it's human to grieve over the loss of dear ones. We love them and we cannot help but miss them. And a true realization of the immortality and continuity of the individual soul robs our grief of hopelessness. So this is a really juicy, rich chapter, and I love that you've been on this journey with me for the last 56 minutes, just looking at some of the highlights from the chapter on immortality. Ernest Holmes ends the chapter with a little kind of poem, but before that, then the last full narrative paragraph, he reminds us that so we prepare not to die, we prepare to live. We prepare not to die, but we prepare to live. When we know that there is immortality, we don't prepare to die and we don't fear it. We prepare to live fully so that when our essence leaves this body, we go into our next experience in the most spiritually grounded way. I cannot believe that our time is up. If you have the opportunity to dive into this chapter, I fully encourage you to do so. Next week, here on the New Thought Media Network, Saturday morning, we'll begin the chapter on the general summary, chapter 24, which begins summarizing everything for the previous 389 pages. And we'll spend a couple of weeks doing that general summary. My name is Tracy Brown. I am so delighted that you joined me today. And please find time during the week to dive into other programs right here on the New Thought Media Network. And I will see you again real soon.